Salutations, listeners.
Si velas valeo.
Baller Magulis.
Nano. Thank you for tuning in. This is Three Men and a Basement, and we are the Ultra Crepidarians. My name is Colin McLeod.
Mark up here.
Action Jackson.
And in this podcast, we review movies and deliver to you, the listener. You're the listener. Whoever's listening right now. Who's listening?
I'm not listening.
You're not listening. You're speaking.
I'm also a speaker.
He's speaking right now. Whoever's listening, we deliver to you our opinions about hidden gems in the wide world of cinema. We target movies that maybe you've seen before and you're wondering if you should see again, or maybe you haven't seen these movies and we're just bringing you fresh recs, like fresh avocados.
Yeah, glazed avocados.
Glazed
Exactly.
avocados. Yeah.
Stuff that in your cloaca. Ugh, gross.
That,
Like a Friday at Elton John's house.
yeah, that's a good way to get an infection, sir.
Maybe. Never been there.
You should go. It's a lot of fun.
Rocket Man.
Come on.
Okay, so we deliver to you very protracted
Cloacas
and intros,
Yep, 2 for 1.
and deliver to you our opinion about whether or not you need to track these movies down for the first time, for the 6th time, for the 10th time, and pop it in your VCR.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Those still exist.
Yeah, you just pop it right in your VHS and, just right in the VHS.
Right in the VHS.
Just right in the VHS.
That's where you get them, right, Mark?
You know, it's a VH chest, right?
The VH
You open up the VH chest, you stick in a VCR, close the VH chest, and there's your movie.
Yep.
I think that's how that works.
That's science.
Bob's your uncle.
I don't have an Uncle Bob.
So,
Now you do.
in this, our 46th episode.
Ooh, yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's one more than 45.
It's insane. You know, it's multiple.
It's almost 47.
No, it's 2 less than 48, which is good.
Yeah.
And that's, what did we review?
Stranger than fiction.
You went Casanova Frankenstein again.
Yes.
Yeah.
Stranger Than Fiction. Cherries on this.
No. I've seen this movie quite a few times.
Same here. Not the movie I've seen the most in my life, but I've seen this movie at least half a dozen times.
It is one that I fairly regularly fall back on, just because I do enjoy it. It's an easy watch.
Yeah. I've only ever seen this movie once, and that was, 15 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Fair.
So-
No, that sounds like it could have coincided when we all watched it together.
I think
you guys remember
you might
that?
be right, yeah.
You guys remember that?
What a coincidence.
Yeah.
What a coincidence.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah. But no, yeah. Quick little squishy pop right over here.
Do love a good squishy pop.
Is that what we're going out for? We're going out for Sushi Pops?
Yeah.
Okay, so Stranger Than Fiction, 2006 film, rated PG-13. I would say yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's a
Solidly 13.
solidly 13. Honestly, I would actually maybe give it like a mild plus PG-13, right? I think this is a soft PG-13. I don't think there's anything that's particularly concerning or objectionable.
No.
1 hour and 53 minutes. I'm going to take issue with that. I would say this movie goes along way faster than that.
Yeah, I was going to say, it didn't feel like a 2-hour movie. I mean, we talk about the tight 90 all the time. This one definitely felt like it falls within the realm of the tight 90 frame.
Yeah, I
Just
agree.
because everything in this movie happens at a very reasonable pace.
Yeah, and it also felt like very intentional.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we'll talk about why, but like it was quirky, it was unique, so like it felt fresh.
There's not a lot of fat to be trimmed in this movie.
No.
Yeah.
Get our buddy Reed on the phone here.
Oh, yeah.
Read description.
Let me
he
go
is.
ahead and read you this description. An IRS auditor, Harold Crick, suddenly finds his mundane Chicago life to be the subject of narration only he can hear. Narration that begins to affect his entire existence, from his work to his love life to his death.
Bum.
Dun, dun, dun.
Thank you, Reed.
Always appreciate Reed jumping in there.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
He reads that description. Genres. What do we have for this movie?
Well, we have comedy,
Yes.
Yes.
drama,
Yes.
Yes.
fantasy,
Yes.
Yeah.
and romance.
Yes.
Yeah.
It all fits.
Do we so we've got comedy at the beginning, we've got romance at the end. Is this a rom-com?
Yeah, why don't you tell us, Mark?
Okay, I'll tell you. I think it's a rom-com.
I agree.
But it doesn't, again,
I will disagree.
does not follow the form. Okay, would you say this is a comedy romance?
Oh, yeah. No, I think those two
But not a
genres.
rom-com.
Yes, I think those two genres absolutely apply independently.
That's fair.
But I don't think that they're a rom-com.
I would say this is less formulaic of a rom-com than Yesterday was.
Yes.
But it is still, well, you know what?
I wouldn't say that. I took exception with yesterday's rom-com as well.
Man,
I wouldn't say that was a rom-com.
All right, we've got fodder. For
Now,
this
I know you think that, Victoria and Abdul was a rom-com.
It absolutely was. Okay. That was one Randy Queen.
Band name, I call it.
Randy Queen.
Randy Queen.
Wow, there's a lot of space for that band to fit into.
No, I would disagree with rom-com, but I do think all of those tags apply. Is there anything that we think was missing?
No, because I think at least for me, the wild card is captured really well with the fantasy tag.
Yeah, I think, again, sort of giving out our subgenres that don't really exist and that are sort of captured in these principal tags, I think this movie would be very well described as a dramedy.
Yeah.
And I say it sort of reticently because, I do not like dramedies as a rule. There are very few that I watch and I'm like, yeah, I really got into that.
Well, they're hard to make work.
Yes, they're really difficult to, land.
Because you've got to make people care and laugh and hurt.
And okay, here's a good example of a dramedy. The movie Click with Adam Sandler was funny until it wasn't, and then it was just not really even redeeming for me.
It's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's the problem with dramedies, right? Is they tend to lead you in with the comedy and you're like, oh yeah, and you're feeling good, and it puts your mind in a certain state, and then it pushes you off a cliff, right? And they're like, haha, just kidding. Gotcha! This movie has feels, and it's a very hard pairing to make work. This movie, I don't think, suffered from that. So if you are averse to that genre as well, don't let that scare you away.
And we'll get into that in a little bit, after we enter spoiler territory.
We will get into that in 17 minutes and 11 seconds.
All right.
From this point.
Cha-cha.
Start the timer.
Very well, very well. Who was in this?
William Ferrell.
William Ferrell?
Yeah.
Is he that guy with the guitar?
He's the drummer for the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Yes, that's how I recognize him. No, Will Ferrell, I would say a rather unique role for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's the protagonist in a comedy, but I felt like his performance was very dry. It was very not dry in a negative way, but in a he was the drama.
Yeah, it was very subdued. It was way outside of Will Ferrell's normal comfort zone delivery. I shouldn't say comfort zone. I don't know what he's comfortable with, but I think the expectation of the audience when they see a Will Ferrell movie, this was not Talladega Nights. This was not Anchorman. If you stay away from his types of movies, if you have an aversion to Will Ferrell because he does Will Ferrell stuff, in the same way that I love Will Ferrell because he does Will Ferrell stuff, this might be something still that you would enjoy. I wouldn't put this movie with the rest of them, so don't let Will Ferrell's leading role in it make you shy away.
I believe that there is a subgenre of a Will Ferrell movie, I mean, sure, there's only a handful of movies that fit that, but that just stupid comedy. This is not a Will Ferrell movie, even though it is a movie with Will Ferrell leading the bill.
Yeah, I would say this movie isn't a hard drama, but I would say this movie is to Will Ferrell's career kind of the way Big Daddy or Reign Over Me are to Adam Sandler's career, right?
Whereas like a Truman Show too
to Jim Carrey. Yeah, exactly. Even though I think Jim Carrey, he's done more than...
He's blossomed as an actor.
He's done that a lot more, I think, than the other two, who were typically strictly comedic actors.
Well, Will Ferrell did another movie similar to this, and I was trying to find it on his IMDb, but I think it's Everything Must Go.
Yeah, that was a good movie.
Yeah, that's another example of Will Ferrell not being classic Will Ferrell. Mm-hmm. A serious role that is funny at times, but is not your...
And he can deliver. That's the thing is, everybody we've discussed, Will Ferrell, Adam Sandler, Jim Carrey, these people have dramatic chops. They can deliver outside of their sort of normal comedy sphere. And I think this movie is my go-to when talking about that with Will Ferrell. Yeah. Yep. Who else we got?
Well, we've got Emma Thompson, who, if you'd have said, hey, this movie's got Emma Thompson in it, I wouldn't know who you were talking about. But the second I heard her voice, I knew exactly who I was listening to.
See, Emma Thompson is a household name for me. Mm-hmm. I have watched so many of her movies. She's a legend. She's incredible.
What do we know Emma Thompson from, though?
Oh, man. Saving Mr. Banks, Love Actually, the new musical Matilda, which I have not seen, but I still want to.
She plays Karen in Love Actually, right?
Yeah.
She was Professor Trelawney in the Harry Potter series. Fun bit of trivia I learned. So she was married to Kenneth Branagh.
Oh, yeah.
And Kenneth Branagh cheated on her with Helena Bonham Carter. Mm-hmm. And so they were all three in the Harry Potter series. And there were some rules set by somebody, rightfully, that those three are not to be on set together ever. The call sheets for these three must be like diametrically opposed.
Yep.
Or there will be blood.
There will be blood. It will turn into a Daniel Day-Lewis flick.
We ain't drinking milkshakes up here.
Yeah.
Another big name, Dustin Hoffman.
Oh,
God, I fucking love Dustin Hoffman.
For me, my favorite Dustin Hoffman role, it's not even like coming up here in IMDb, but fucking Hook.
yes.
God. I was so old when I learned that he... Like, I knew who Dustin Hoffman was. I loved Dustin Hoffman long before I learned that he was Hook because he was so convincing and he had the wig and he had the mustache and I did not recognize him.
No, somebody was like, oh, dude, Dustin Hoffman was so good in Hook. I was like, who did he play in Hook? And they were like, Captain Hook. I was like, yeah, okay, sure. I've watched that movie 100 times. And then I watched it again. I was like, that's fucking Dustin Hoffman.
It's so hit. And like, for me, it's like the voice. Like, you can hear it in his voice, but if you're not listening for it. Also, another fucking crazy little thing about Hook. Do you remember the pirate that doubts him in the beginning who ends up going into the boo box?
Yep.
That was Glenn fucking Close.
Yes!
Glenn Close in a fucking beard. That scene traumatized me as a kid. I loved that movie, but that one scene...
It's terrifying.
That wrecked me.
Terrifying.
I don't think I ever want to go in the boo box.
I can say with confidence, I do not want to go in the boo box.
I don't think... do we need a boo box? Do we...
Well, some people need a boo box.
There are some people that are designated... destined for the boo box.
Yeah. Is it kind of like Mark Twain, right? Said, I never wish death upon a man, but I read many an obituary with a smile. You know, it's kind of like, I never wish the boo box on another person, but I've seen somebody enter the boo box with a smile.
I wouldn't do it to you, but if it happened in front of me, I would be eating popcorn.
Yeah.
You know what? You say it, there probably are a few people I can think of.
The world needs a boo box somewhere, unfortunately, but I don't want to have anything to do with it.
Nope.
You know who shouldn't go in the boo box?
Queen Latifah?
Yes, because she's a delight.
She is!
That's exactly what I was thinking of.
Yeah. She's also in this movie, as it happens.
Queen Latifah, actress, singer extraordinaire. Okay, so she's been in a lot of very high-profile things. She was in Chicago. She played Matron Mama in Chicago. She played Motormouth in Hairspray. She played the leads in Last Holiday and Bringing Down the House. But honestly, the first thing that pops into my head when I think of movies with Queen Latifah was, to my understanding, her very first acting role in Sphere, which I'm actually just now, as I'm saying
Dustin Hoffman.
Realizing is with Dustin Hoffman as well.
I didn't know she was in that. I need to rewatch
that.
Yeah,
she plays Edward. So there's not a lot of people in the movie, right? It's like the core team plus Peter Coyote plus 2 technicians.
Yeah.
She is one of the technicians, the one that like goes out to like reset the sub, and then she gets attacked by the jellyfish. Mm-hmm. She's the one who dies from the jellyfish. But I mean, she's like, it's not like a bit part. Like, she talks and she, acts in it.
What an interesting transition, if that truly was like her first like acting role, like major acting role, from her music career. Because, I mean, she was prolific before she ever was on screen.
When I think of Queen Latifah in film, I automatically go to Last Holiday. That's my most memorable role for her. And, oh my God, she was phenomenal in that movie.
The only other person we definitely have to mention before we move on is Maggie Gyllenhaal.
Yes.
Who is totally unknown and is simply the sister of Jake Gyllenhaal. And that's it.
It's true.
Of course, I jest. Maggie Gyllenhaal is a fucking delight. And she's a powerhouse actress. Honestly, this is one of the first movies that pops into my head for Maggie Gyllenhaal. But yeah, she was in Dark Knight.
She played Lee Holloway in Secretary.
You know who she reminds me of? Kirsten Dunst.
Yeah. No, big.
A little bit.
Her facial structure.
She was in Frank. Do you guys remember Frank?
I don't remember that one.
It's like this really bizarre movie about this like eccentric musician who wears a head. He wears like this, I don't know if it's paper mache or what, but it's like he wears this plastic or paper mache head like all the time. She's in that with like Domhnall Gleeson and stuff. She's the one who hates Domhnall Gleeson. But yeah, no, Maggie Gyllenhaal is just fucking amazing. And not to put too fine a point on it, but like,
yeah, she's smoking hot.
Oh, She's smart.
Yeah, she was Debbie in Confessions of a Dangerous Mind. She was Giselle in Mona Lisa's Smile. Like, she's big-time actress.
I mean, she was also in Donnie Darko with her brother, right?
Yeah.
Like, she was the one who tells him to go suck a fuck.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Tell me precisely how does one suck a fuck?
If you have to ask, you don't know.
And you're probably too young. Directed by Mark Forrester, written by Zach Helm. These names don't necessarily ring any bells with me.
No.
I'm sure that they've done things that are noteworthy, but nothing that comes to mind.
Are we ready to wreck this bitch?
Riggedy wreck it!
Wreck-It Ralph.
I'm a wreck it!
Wreck it up.
I would recommend this movie for actually what's odd is like kind of the same reasons that I did for the last movie we watched. It's safe, it's enjoyable, it's quirky.
It's wholesome.
Yeah, it's got that it's got if you've seen Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the movie that came out 10 years ago or whatever.
Martin Freeman and Sam Rockwell and Zooey Deschanel.
Yep.
Yeah, the way that it's narrated, like, it's got strong vibes there, but it stands very much on its own as a unique property. It doesn't feel like it's riffing off of anything, which immediately I'm going to recommend a movie that I've never seen anything like it every time.
Oh, yeah.
But I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yep, I have, do, and will wreck this movie to so many people. Like, anybody that wants to watch, like Mark was saying, a safe, comfortable, wholesome film that's just generally unobjectionable and unoffensive. This is the kind of movie that I would be like, yeah, you guys want to come over for a movie night and hang out and watch something that is going to piss off nobody? That would be this one.
Yep.
Yeah, I feel like what we do oftentimes in this part where we're recommending it is like, would you recommend it to a general audience? And if not, who specifically would you recommend it to? This is the first movie I think I can think of that we've talked about where it's like, I can't think of a single group of people that like I wouldn't recommend this movie to.
Yeah,
it's just generally a very well executed movie that is interesting and unique, and that's kind of the sort of alpha and omega of the wreck, right? Like,
Yeah.
So one more thing before we move into spoilers, I did want to say is that this is the kind of movie that definitely lends itself to watching it kind of de novo. So if you are at all sensitive to spoilers, if you think you want to watch this movie at all, it is the kind of movie that I think maybe you should just watch without hearing us talk about it and explain it. If that's not the kind of thing that bothers you, fine, by all means march on. But it is definitely an awesome movie to watch just with fresh, with no knowledge of it. Are we ready to blah 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 blah
Blah, blah, blah.
You went Scatman Jones, and you were dangerously close to going with the blah 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 blah. I might have to mix that up a little bit so we don't get sued because that property is well protected.
Right. Fucking Disney.
They're not paying attention to nothing. They ain't paying attention to nothing. Okay, so how does the movie start?
Starts with a watch.
Yeah. Starts with a glowing blue wristwatch on the wrist of our protagonist, Harold Crick, played by none other than Will Ferrell.
He's a pretty good protagonist.
Yeah.
Yep.
Actually, I say that. He's actually characteristically a pretty bad protagonist. Like,
Typically.
like a protagonist is supposed to
Like push the narrative
supposed to be relatable and kind of like through their own actions, advance the plot. He's a pretty boring fucker.
He's an unremarkable human being.
Yep.
And that's kind of what the beginning is all about, is just kind of showcasing that he does this, and he does this, and he does this, and he's been doing the same thing for the last 10 years.
He brushes each set of teeth 38 times. He puts his tie on the same way. He always grabs an apple before he leaves, and he's always almost late for the bus.
Which is even among your standard protagonists before they have their sort of call to action, whatever it happens to be. He kind of sucks as a protagonist. He's hard to relate to. He's very
He's
droll.
an NPC.
Yeah, he's very droll. He is an NPC. That's exactly right. Like, that's a perfect way of putting him. He is the guy behind, the Khajiit has wares.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, he's free guy without the algorithm.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting him.
And they don't ham him up like he's suffering from, like, obsessive compulsive disorder or anything like that. He's just perfectly quaint and boring,
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like with mental health conditions, I'm going to speak out of turn. I'm not like an expert, but like, I feel like there's like a motivating factor behind those things, right? Like, you're obsessive or compulsive or you're anxious or something. Something is
that.
driving that, and there's an energy behind it. Whereas, like, his meticulousness and how boring he is born strictly out of, like, well, this is the easiest way to do things efficiently. and nothing more.
Yeah, he's done the same job for years. He crunches numbers for a living. He works at the IRS, and he has routines that he sticks to every single day.
And he doesn't just work at the IRS. He's an auditor, which is, like,
The worst.
the worst job. Like, it's like boring and dangerous had a baby.
Yeah.
Like, you simultaneously, everybody fucking hates you, and you have to do fucking terrible work every day. I think his job would only be rivaled, perhaps, by, like, a baggage claim attendant.
Yeah.
In how much it would suck from a service standpoint and a, like, operational standpoint.
Yep. But one thing I really enjoyed about kind of the first maybe 15 minutes or so is, like, and I'm sure we'll gush over it later, but the unique, like, camera angles, and, like, they were doing this thing where they were, like, drawing on the screen. I don't know how you describe it, but they're almost like illustrating some of his thoughts, or, like,
they're like infographics
Yeah.
around his body and action and world.
Yep, and it
that
just
he can't see. Nobody can see.
And it showcases how predictable his pattern is.
It basically looks like the data and spreadsheets and numbers come up and sort of represent the calculated nature of his world. And I saw, like, the glint in your eye when you first saw that, and I was like, yes. For multiple reasons. One, I forgot that was a component of this movie, and I'm always, like, happy to see it again. But then also I remember having that exact same reaction. I was like, the first time I saw it, I was like, this is fucking brilliant. And kind of what is extra brilliant, you know, not to jump the gun too much here, but, like, as the movie progresses and he progresses as a person, as a character, those things start to fade away, and you feel a little like the character in that you almost don't notice that they're falling away, but then retrospectively you look back and you're like, look at how much progress I've made. I haven't seen a fucking, you know, infographic about how many tiles are in the bathroom in, like, days. Like,
Yeah, and it is interesting, too, how they move away from it, too. Like, I don't know how to describe it, but there's, like, progressively, like, fewer and fewer applications for it, to the point where, like, it almost looks as though they were about to illustrate something, and, like, you see, like, a couple of white lines drawn, and then it just disappears, and if you weren't looking for it, you wouldn't see it. Like, it's very intentional, and it's very fluid how it just, like, fades away.
Yeah, and at that point you've sort of, like, been conditioned to it, so like you said, you might not even notice because you just assume it was something else, but if you were actually paying attention to it, you're right. Like, the later ones are less filled out, less developed, less, you know.
Yeah, almost like it was an accident, sort of, but, like, clearly
Well,
it's not.
and I think what it's meant to illustrate is that his predictable life has become unpredictable and aberrant.
Right.
Yeah.
So Harold wakes up, and I think basically the very beginning of the movie is an illustration of just how fucking boring this guy is. It walks you through a day in his life, goes to the office. His office is just...
Gray.
I mean, just hell for me. Like, the worst I could imagine.
Blow my brains out and paint the walls, like, fucking...
Which would be great, because it would add some color to the very gray and white walls. Like...
God.
Like,
I don't know. I thought it was pretty well organized.
Fucking accent wall of gray matter, like fucking. Oh my god!
That scene in the hallway with all the perfectly stacked,
white boxes.
Oh, it's like you could find anything in there, right? Everything's got a label.
I want to go in there with a paint can and go nuts.
But then you might lose something.
I lose everything.
Yeah, it's mine. He will lose his mind if this thing doesn't get more color. But yeah, no, the first scene is really like him walking through his day, and there is a narrator who begins right at the beginning when his watch first wakes him up and walks you, the audience, through, what is going on. Tells, like Jackson said, how many times he brushes his teeth because he counts them, how many steps he takes to the bus stop, what bus he takes at exactly what time, and on and on and on. By the end of the day, I mean, it is exhausting to think about how regimented this guy's day is. He wakes up the next day and is brushing his teeth, and the narrator continues as is to be expected, and you think it's just going to sort of march along the way it did the previous day. All of a sudden he stops and starts looking around.
And he says hello to his toothbrush like that's where the voice is coming from.
Holds it up to his ear, returns to brushing, and then, the narrator keeps talking about his brushing, and it becomes evident that he can actually hear the person who's narrating his life.
Which would be alarming.
Yeah.
Just a smidge.
A little bit. So this kind of continues on. He starts asking people throughout his day, if they hear the voice, and people obviously are looking at him like he's crazy. And it carries on until we get that hallway scene, I think, where he gets a new job.
Yep.
Or rather...
A new assignment.
Yeah, he and his friend are both given assignments, and his friend kind of seeing that he's already kind of like talking to himself and acting weird, he's like, why don't you take the baker?
Yeah. The easy one.
Yeah.
The other guy was like a securities trader.
Yeah.
The manila envelope was like overflowing and the baker's was like razor thin.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And this is when we meet our author. It cuts away to a scene of Emma Thompson jumping off of a building, ultimately to her death, only to find out that that is just what the inside of her head looks like, which must be exhausting. And it cuts to her standing there frustrated on the top of her desk and meeting her new assistant, Queen Latifah, and saying, so I'm guessing the reason you're here is because I don't know how to kill Harold Crick. Because Emma Thompson has writer's block and cannot figure out how to end Harold's story.
And Queen Latifah gives her every fucking platitude in the book to try to, just on the surface, like, the subtext is all very clear, but, like, just on the surface say, no, I'm your assistant, I provide all of the services of a secretary, but both parties are well aware that Queen Latifah is an agent of the publisher set there explicitly to make sure that Emma Thompson makes her deadline on the book that she has promised.
And at this point, it's not made clear that she is an author that is, like, I mean... They never spell it out, which I appreciate.
Right.
Like, you can tell that there's a connection between the two of them because obviously you heard her voice narrating Mr. Crick's life. But there was like a moment there where I'm still trying to figure out what her relationship is to him and her obsession with death. I wasn't sure, is she a god character? Is she real? Is she death?
Is this Bruce Almighty or is this...
Yeah, and that's what I had thought initially is, because she's like, every conversation that she has with Queen Latifah at this point is like in like a white room. It's a very sterile room. It's like, is this meant to be something that is not of this world? And I love that they really don't spell it out. It becomes clear as you go through the movie, but I just like how that unwraps itself. I just had to throw that in there because I feel like it's like the halfway point where you start really kind of connecting the dots, and at this point, there's still a lot of ambiguity there.
See, I really like that perspective because I've seen this movie a bunch of times, so having watched it and knowing what the plot is, that escaped me. I didn't even for a second consider that there might be some sort of supernatural or otherworldly component because I knew she was the author. So, yeah, taking a fresh perspective and looking at it from that point of view is really interesting.
Okay, so he's got the job. He's going to audit the baker. And he finds her little shop. I forget the name of it.
Cookies for All.
No.
Socialist cookies.
I paid very close attention to it, but I didn't write it down. Fuck.
This is the kind of thing that I'm not helpful.
I know, I'm trying to think of
a baking pun?
Yeah, with Karl Marx.
If you bake it, we will take it. I love how this is the thing that's derailed us.
Yeah. What?
It's gonna bug me.
All right, you keep going, and he can look it up and then jump in with it.
Okay, so we meet the baker.
Not the candlestick maker.
Right. What was her name again? It was Miss
Anna Pascal.
Miss Pascal. One thing that's nifty is like you don't really hear her first name very often. Like she's frequently referred to as just Miss Pascal. But she does not care about what his job is. She's aware that she didn't pay all of her taxes last year, and that's the way that she preferred it. She gives him a little speech about, how she's all for fixing roads and giving money to schools and yada yada. But she's not really a big fan of campaign discretionary funds and other wastes of money. So she just, she didn't pay those taxes.
Yeah, she actually, at that point, explains all of that to his face, says to him something to the effect of, yeah, I think I sent a letter with my tax return last year, something to that effect. And he goes, oh yeah, I have that here. And he pulls out this piece of paper and he goes, is it the one that begins, Dear Imperialist Swine?
Yes.
If I didn't have such like a pathological fear of authority, I would absolutely do that. I would absolutely include that.
Yep. So she's great. She's sarcastic. She's funny. She's got a relationship with all of her customers. You can tell that she's very comfortable in her little niche, which is very chaotic.
it's very bohemian.
Yes.
Like, she's clearly a very sort of like liberal and free spirit. She runs the kind of store where she's probably running it as like a pay if you can kind of model, right? She bakes things. She gives a lot of it away to the local homeless community. She's very welcoming.
There's a homeless guy that frequents her bakery that just hangs out.
To give you an idea, every time there's a shot of the bakery, there is never two people in that bakery with the same hairstyle.
No.
And I mean that in that, like, it's not like one's shorter than the other. It's like one is a mohawk, one is like a shaved head, one is like a Wayne Static, like hair straight up in the air kind of thing.
One is very Kurt Cobain. One, yeah.
Totally, totally unique personalities and people, and that sort of like eclectic bohemian vibe is, you can tell, exactly what she is going for.
Yep. And it's the total opposite of Will Ferrell's character. Okay, so the next stretch, I suppose, is
well, she tortures him that day.
Yeah,
she makes his life a living hell.
Yep. It's like, what was that line? She says something like, you've had a hard day. I made sure of it.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
Mr. Crick, it was a very bad day. I know. I made sure of it.
Yes.
She brings all of her receipts and, paperwork in a box. And he's like, this is how you keep your files? And she's like, no, I'm actually very fastidious. I did this just to bug you. And I'm like, yeah, no, that would be me. I mentioned it earlier. I have all of my tax documents digitally and hard copy backed up. And if I ever got audited, I would print all of them out and scrunch them into little balls and throw them in a box and say, have fun.
Just for use.
You do love balls.
I do.
Scrunched ones. Okay, so he...
Scrunched ones are the best ones.
Oh, Jesus. Okay, wait, hang on. Let's explore this.
It's the surface area.
Yeah.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's increased surface area. So
Yeah.
it's very attractive.
I suppose that would be true, right? You do increase the surface area by, like, crinkling things.
Yeah.
So, okay.
It's very sexy.
Oh, well, the surface area per volume, right? Because you're reducing the volume.
Right.
That's why raisins are objectively more attractive than grapes.
They're better than grapes?
Everybody talks about it. No, I'm not saying better. I'm just saying like more
aesthetically
attractive.
pleasing.
Oh,
Yeah.
so like you guys have you have a draw towards towards raisins over grapes.
I would date a raisin. I would not date a grape.
I mean, not that I've given it much thought, except for my let's say 12 to 18, but that raisin in the beginning of the movie theater ads,
Yeah.
right? That dancing sexy raisin.
Yeah.
I mean, not sexy, but like
A little sexy.
I definitely
a little sexy.
I
This is a
gave
safe
that
space.
thoughts.
This
Yeah.
is a safe
Yeah.
space.
Yeah, this okay. Thank you. All right. Yes.
Like
All
I
right.
would take
I'm
a
glad that you told me this was a safe space. I can admit it. I wanted to fuck the shit out of that raisin.
Yeah, we all did.
Yeah, dude.
Like, I would take a grape out for a nice romantic evening, but I wouldn't bring the grape home to mom.
No, you
Right.
feel like you'd squish them.
Yeah.
But a raisin can take a pounding.
There is safety in raisins.
You don't really want to peel a grape.
No.
No.
Although you have to when you have small children. And let me tell you, it's not a fun process.
This took a turn.
Peeling that grape.
So, speaking of fucking raisins,
This one time.
what happens after he leaves her shop?
All right, he's trying to figure out what the hell's wrong with him.
Right.
I don't know if this is right after the shop, but I feel like, this is like the next part of the story.
Yes, if memory serves. I think it gets kicked off the next day. He's about to have just sort of yet another day like this, and he's doing a pretty fucking decent job at just ignoring this voice, which is a very Harold thing to do.
Yeah.
Like, you don't know a whole lot about this guy because the guy is about as, deep as a piss stain. But,
Yeah.
he is definitely the kind of guy who would just ignore a voice in his head. In this next day, when he's ready to just sort of ignore the voice and march on, he's listening to this voice narrate what it's doing and how pissed off his watch is and blah, blah, blah. And his watch kind of freaks out. And then all of a sudden, he hears the voice say, and I'm going to say this and know that this is the single most important line in the movie, and it's something that gets repeated at least, I would say, half a dozen times. He hears the voice say, little did he know that this little, seemingly innocuous act would result in his imminent death.
What? Is what he says. And
Yeah.
He's like, exclaims it quite loudly. He's at a bus stop. When he
Surrounded
uses-
by people.
I might have the same reaction.
Yeah, I can't say I wouldn't do that.
If I heard a voice in my head telling me I was going to die, I would freak the fuck out.
You question it.
Yeah.
You question it.
I mean, I have that voice, but we've made peace.
Yeah.
Right?
No, you've come to an understanding.
Yeah, his name is Devin, and we've come to an understanding that he won't kill me in the next 6 months.
See, mine's a deep gnome named Bartholomew that tries to sell me drugs.
Do you call him Bart?
I do.
Yeah, no, I know him.
Yeah, Bart's an asshole.
He's not a nice guy.
God.
I've never met him.
And you can only understand him when
Count your
you're drunk.
blessings, Mark. Count your blessings.
Because when you're sober, he just sounds like Hersh.
Yeah, no, he is just...
Like the Swedish chef, but like in a dick way.
You basically have to keep that guy permanently pickled.
Yeah.
Yep, just to understand what the fuck he's saying. And most of what he's saying you don't want to hear anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There were considerably fewer gnomes in this movie.
Yeah, less than...
Yeah, I didn't see any.
Less than one, but more than...
-1.
Yes.
More than -1.
Somewhere in there.
There was more than a negative number of trolls in this movie. So that's...
Yep.
Or gnomes in this movie.
Deep gnomes.
Yeah, deep gnomes.
So, okay. Bus stop. He hears this. I think this is like the catalyst for him trying to really figure out what the hell is going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, he basically goes from having this shit happen to him to like for the first time taking active steps to doing something about it, being an active participant in his own story.
Yep.
And the first thing he does, very understandably, is see a psychologist.
He is no longer an NPC. He is a player character, and he is making it his mission to figure out what the fuck is going on in his head.
So very quickly, she says...
He went to an oracle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everything you're describing to me, schizophrenia.
Yeah.
And he just quickly... No, that's not it. Can't be it. You know?
No.
And then he's like arguing semantics. You know, it's not a voice in my head. You know, it's not talking to me. It's talking about me. And he's like,
It's not telling me to do things. It's telling me what I'm already doing.
yeah,
Which I, again, admittedly limited professional knowledge of these things, but as I understand it, is kind of the case. Like, that would be a very unusual case, as I understand it, of schizophrenia, where, like, the voice doesn't interact with you at all. It literally just, as a third party, narrates your life.
Yeah, just a casual observer.
Yeah, like auditory hallucinations are already, like, you know, not in every case of schizophrenia, but, like, also they're typically, like, you know, motivating or you know, agential, whereas this one is very passive and, like, just sort of, like, says what's going on in this guy's life, however fucking mundane it may be.
yeah. So he, you know, refusing her diagnoses, kind of like just gives her like a hypothetical, like, hey, if this was happening to you, what would you do? And she kind of like, sort of like gives up trying to do her job, and she just like plays along, and she's, well, I would reach out to, was it like a literary analysis or something?
An expert in literature.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then cut to, I don't know if it's the next scene, but like really kind of like the next scene more or less is he's sitting down with Dustin Hoffman's character.
Yeah.
Kind of giving him the same story. And Mr. Hoffman takes him quite seriously and starts trying to crack that egg.
Yeah,
Trying to figure out what kind of story he's in so that he can tell him a little bit more about, you know, the plot.
Yeah, when he first meets Dustin Hoffman, they're like walking into clearly one of the academic buildings at the institution that Hoffman teaches at. And he is clearly very busy. He is drinking a cup of coffee like constantly. He's always got a fucking cup of coffee in his hand. He's buzzing around. He is very perceptive, and he is noticing that, like, without Harold saying anything, he's noticing that Harold is, like, casually counting the stairs and the tiles, and, like, he realizes, like, this guy is just a walking calculator, and that's it. That is the alpha and omega of this fella. And they get into his office, and he's asking him all these questions, and basically concludes, you're boring as shit. Nobody wants to write a fucking book about you.
Yeah, and that kind of, I'm just going to go ahead and throw it in here now, but one of my quotes is stemmed right out of this particular scene. And Dustin Hoffman says, you know, she couldn't possibly be a narrator. There isn't much to narrate, you know. It's just like
Fucking brutal.
Savage.
Ugh. And that's why I picked it, because, you know, it's got that familiar
He'll leave it to
sting.
Mark to choose, like, the crushing insult. So he doesn't want to help him initially, and he's basically... It's funny, he's standing in the doorway, Will Ferrell's standing in the doorway, and Dustin Hoffman literally closes the door on him, but Will Ferrell doesn't move, so he just closes the door into him as far as it'll go, and then walks
just walks away.
And then he basically, like, trying to give him something to do so he will, like, be satisfied and leave his office, says something to the effect of, like, why don't you write down what this voice is saying so you have a better handle on what it is. And this is, again, where this very important line comes up, Will Ferrell says something to the effect of like, I can't remember it all happened so fast. The only one I remember is little did he know this little seemingly innocuous act would lead to his imminent death. And then that stops Dustin Hoffman in his tracks and he says, did you say little did he know? And he like goes off in this diatribe about like, I've written papers on little did he know. I've taught seminars on little did he know. You know, I've given lectures on little did he know. And then he gets really excited and he gets in a fervor. He goes, little did he know means that there's something that he didn't know, which means there's something that you don't know. Did you know that?
It's full on manic.
Yeah, he is. Yes, you're totally right. Like, he's already kind of buzzing and like
that was the chum
on edge, and like, yeah, then he just starts swarming, and he's like, oh god, this guy's really packing it in.
Well, and then Will Ferrell is like, wait a second, why 10 seconds ago you didn't want to help me? And he goes, well, it's been a very informative 10 seconds.
Right? Yeah, right.
Yes.
That's a great line.
And that like beautifully like dry Dustin Hoffman delivery too.
Oh, perfect.
Been a very informative 10 seconds.
He does. He commands that as an actor. He commands that ability to make absolutely anything sound good.
Yeah.
Right. It comes out of his mouth and it pours out like caramel. Like it sounds good coming from him. He's got just a beautiful voice.
I wouldn't be mad if he narrated my life.
Oh, I'd be perfectly happy hearing that voice.
Yeah.
I mean, you say that now.
If it happened tomorrow, I would freak out for probably about an hour. But then I would be like, you know what?
Thank God it's not Steve Buscemi.
Yep. Could be worse.
I'm sorry, Steve Buscemi. I really like you as an actor too, but respectfully, I wouldn't want to hear your voice in my head for the rest of my life.
Could be Nicki Minaj.
Oh God.
Cardi B.
I know those names, and I just I can't hear their voices in my head, but I would imagine that they're not.
But no,
they're no James Earl Jones or like
Jeremy Irons.
Oh yeah,
Willem Dafoe.
That one would be a little creepy, I think.
I could roll with it.
I would not be happy with that.
I would graciously accept it.
Instead of like there was a firefight, it'd be like, he made a sandwich.
It was a firefight. Yeah, I mean, there's times during my day where I don't want to hear Willem Dafoe.
Yeah?
Like when you're pooping.
Because
the thing is, like, you have instincts, right? You're an animal. Every animal knows that it's most vulnerable when it's pooping.
Yeah.
It's something absurd. Like 80% of sloth deaths happen when they're pooping because they have to come down out of the trees. Oh. Right? Every animal knows that it's vulnerable when it's pooping.
That's why dogs look at you when they take a shit.
Actually, I think it is. Yeah. You're right. It's like, protect me because
that's what
I'm at risk right now.
That's what the super awkward eye contact is. Whenever your dog takes a shit and they just look directly into your soul and you're like, stop it, why are you looking at me?
And the thing is, Willem Dafoe has a voice that is like by definition almost threatening.
Yeah, no, every sphincter in my body would close.
You couldn't poop again.
Nope.
Can you imagine?
But James Earl Jones or like Morgan Freeman, and the poop slid out of him, and you'd be like, yeah, Morgan Freeman, take me there. It's like I'm drinking a warm cup of coffee.
As the product crested the horizon. You know?
The corn massaged his cornhole on the way out.
I would also accept Jeff Bridges. I think Jeff Bridges would be a nice one.
I mean, it's like
your poop, man.
Yeah, it's like your poop, man. So good. Okay. Okay, so
at the end of the first meeting with Will Ferrell and Dustin Hoffman says to Will Ferrell, let's meet again. And Will Ferrell goes, okay, what about Friday? He exclaims, no, Friday, no, you could be dead by Friday. We don't know when you're going to die. Meet me tomorrow.
Which is weird because like he's now suddenly taking him seriously. You know, 10 minutes ago he was trying to close the door on his face.
So that tees him up for meeting number 2, which happens the next day. And when he gets there, Dustin Hoffman says he's prepared a list of 23 questions, which I'm pretty sure turned into a lot more questions than just the 23.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But the questions were absolutely absurd. Mm-hmm. And he primes him. He's like, okay, listen, this is going to sound ridiculous, but I need you to be perfectly candid with me about the answers. Like, you know, are you the king of anything?
King of the lanes at your local bowling alley.
Like, what are you
is there
talking about?
Is there a micro colony living under your floorboards? And he's like, what the fuck?
What are the odds on a scale from 1 to 10 that you will be assassinated? 1 being very unlikely, 10 being expecting it around every corner.
This is ridiculous, you know. And then I'm going to throw another line in there, you know, because I love Dustin Hoffman says, well, let's start at ridiculous and move backward from there.
Right? So he's asking him all these questions, and Will Ferrell is like, why are you asking these questions? Why these questions? And he's like, well, they may seem like nonsense to you, but I've just eliminated every Greek tragedy, most of the Chinese literature, and 7 fairy tales, and we've established that since you're not a king, you're not secretly Hamlet.
And I love it because, like, Dustin Hoffman is, like, taking it very seriously now, which is just so, like, weird because it's so absurd. It helps, like, add some weight to what he's going through. You don't feel like it's all crazy.
And it's interesting, too, from, like, the perspective of somebody who's not, like, trained in literary analysis, right? Because it's like, if I just heard that voice, I'd probably have the same reaction as him, other than, you know, I mean, I would obviously seek help, but, like, I'd be like, okay, it's a voice. But, like, somebody who could come at it from, like, an academic and a critical lens, who's very well versed in literature, would be like, well, you know, the voice is in English. The person, whoever it is, has a commanding knowledge of the city that you're in. Like you said, we know because you're not a king that, you know, you're not Hamlet, it's not this, it's not that, and blah, blah, blah. You know, he understands.
Like, seemingly benign facts do, in fact, help narrow down what he's going through.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, and sort of triangulate his position in the literary universe, which I wouldn't be able to do myself, and I don't know anybody who would. So, like, a Dustin Hoffman-style literary expert would be perfect to do that.
Yes.
Yep. Okay, so what happens next? He leaves the office and
He goes about his job.
He gets homework.
Yeah, homework to try to keep track of the positive and negative things in his life. So at this point, he wants to try to, like, narrow down exactly sort of what he's going through. And part of that homework is to keep track of the comedy bits and the tragedy bits. He's got this little notebook that he's kind of scribbling down little hash marks on, and it's cute at first because you kind of see him, you know, he says something that gets a smile out of somebody, and he puts a little kind of knot down on comedy, and you think that, oh, he's kind of going back and forth. Dustin
Hoffman leaving that meeting, he references some major literary theorist, the same person who came up with the idea of, like, the happy and the sad mask, right? Like,
yeah.
Everything ultimately boils down to a comedy or a tragedy. It's either about the propagation of life or the inevitability of death.
In a tragedy, somebody dies, and in a comedy, they get hitched.
Yeah, and it's the hero, right? It's the protagonist, which in this case is Harold, and that's terrifying. So he's trying to narrow down whether he's in a comedy or tragedy, which is going to help him tremendously in, again, triangulating his position in literature. And so, like Mark said, right, he's got this, like, notebook where as things happen to him, whether he should consider that as being in a tragedy or in a comedy.
Mm-hmm. And then by the end of the day, you know, I forget exactly how the scene goes, but he narrows down that he is in fact in a tragedy.
Yeah, so she makes him cookies and makes him sit down at the table and basically force feeds him a cookie.
She being the baketress?
The baketress.
Actually, I've got an interesting bitty about that. So Old English and Old Anglican languages used to use the suffix xter, or X. Anything involving an X, basically, was to denote a profession that was operated by a woman. Mm-hmm. So Baker is by definition a man, but the surname Baxter is actually the female version of the name and profession Baker.
Interesting.
Yeah, isn't that neat? It's the same, like, rule that gives us dominator and dominatrix.
Interesting.
So little fun tidbit there for you. So yeah, she would be a Baxter. Is the
old Baxter?
Oh, that old Baxter!
That old Baxter! Dirty old Baxter!
Take the whole wheel of cheese.
Now, dirty old Baxter. Now that is, I believe, one of Darius Rucker's side projects.
Yeah.
Dirty old Baxter.
Dirty old Baxter.
Band name going down.
Yeah. Okay, so it's crushing when you kind of see a little glimpse of his notebook at the end of that particular day, and you just see that, like, it's all tragedy. You know, I think he's got maybe like 5 notes under comedy.
This actually was one of my quotes. He says, because it was so heartbreaking. I mean, it's just like turns your guts over. He starts to kind of choke up a little bit, and he goes,
when talking to what's her face,
Anna Pascal.
Yeah. He goes, this may sound like gibberish to you, but I think I'm in a tragedy. And then he, like, runs out into the rain. It's shockingly difficult to watch.
It's so brutal.
It's really upsetting because the poor guy is, like, he has basically taken an evaluation of his life, and the evidence is overwhelming that he's in a tragedy.
And being in a tragedy means he's going to die.
Yeah.
Yep. So he goes back to Dustin Hoffman and he shares this news with him. And is that the point where he brings out his list of different authors that he's sort of like tried to narrow it down to, and then we have a conversation where we're...
Before that meeting, I think the next big part is do nothing.
Yeah. So
Okay.
he goes back to Dustin Hoffman and explains that he's in a tragedy. And so Dustin Hoffman is like, all right, take a day. Do nothing. Don't answer the phone. Don't go to the bathroom. Don't leave your apartment. Just do nothing.
Let the plot come to you.
Yep. Don't further the plot.
Which is basically like a challenge, right? He has this whole bit about like the plot of a book either marches along in spite of the characters or because of the characters. And he's like, if I stop walking, the plot stops because I'm not advancing it. But sometimes shit can happen to you, whether you want to or not. So we need to establish whether or not, basically, you're in control.
Yeah. And he demonstrates this by saying, if I don't open this door, I don't further the plot. But if I don't open this door, I will be late. And then just marches through.
Confidently strolls in.
Yep. So the whole next day, Will Ferrell just sits in his room. He does not answer the phone.
Peas in a bottle.
Doesn't even change the channel on the TV.
Nope.
Oh, God.
Like, he reaches over and he's, like, about to, and then he just kind of, like, leans back. He's like, nope.
And it's just violent nature documentaries all day.
Oh, my God, it was so funny. Like, the little, like, bit, I don't even remember any of them, but, like, it was clearly, like, just meant to be funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a crocodile eating a gazelle, and then monkeys getting their eyes plucked out and sent to cosmetic companies.
It reminded
Yeah.
me of the bits from Family Guy where they were like, damn, nature, you scary.
Right? Yeah. To your point, Mark, about reaching for the remote and then stopping, I feel like it was such a good illustration of, like, how good this guy is at following rules.
Yes.
Like, he lives in a rule-based bubble.
You said do nothing. I'm doing nothing.
I'm doing nothing. Like, he didn't instruct him to not go to the bathroom.
No.
But you
But
said
he
do
took
nothing,
that
so
as, I'm not going to get off the
I'm
couch.
going to pee in a bottle.
You didn't say I could go pee.
So he sleeps on the couch. He wakes up the next day, and he's like, all right, I didn't further the plot. We're all good. I did nothing. And suddenly, an excavator crashes through the outside wall of his living room, grabs his TV, and just scoops it.
Rips it out. And then comes back in for more, and it's just, like, eating his room. And, like, he's got to jump off of his couch because it's coming for him, more or less.
And he just jumps up and he's like, hey, what the hell, man? And they're like, dude, what are you doing here? He's like, I live here. This is where I keep my stuff. And then he's like, what do you mean you live here? He rattles off his address, and the guys were like, oh, shit, wrong apartment. My bad.
Mm-hmm.
But retrospectively, that excavator was going, nom nom, I'm plot. Advance me.
Yep. So he takes this experience back to Hoffman to see how that gets spit back out at him.
Yeah, and Hoffman's advice is basically, there's not much I can do to help you at this point.
Oh, shit.
What I advise you to do is basically live your best life because you don't have any control over this. So somebody who is facing their mortality has been, in some ways, oftentimes given the gift of freedom, right? Freedom from the future. You can live with little to no consequence. He can live and do what he wants to do. And, Dustin Hoffman tries to pull out, what his dreams and aspirations are. Basically, all he gets is like, I want to learn how to play the guitar. But it is an important and pivotal scene because it is the first time that Will Ferrell is faced with this idea of like, if I can't shake this, I might as well become the person I've always wanted to be. It's cool and it's inspiring.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not particularly wild by, I think, normal standards, but it's like he goes and buys the guitar, and he goes and he makes an advance towards Miss Pascal, which is probably the biggest thing that he does.
This is my favorite scene in the entire movie, and I've seen it in clips, I've seen it in, like, Facebook Reels, and it is so fucking adorable that I can't stand it. He goes to Anna Pascal because he feels drawn to her. He needs to see her. And obviously he's developed affection for her at this point. But he shows up at her bakery as it's closing, holding this box of brown bags, like just unmarked brown sacks, and starts talking to her. And he's like, I want you. And she's like, you want me? It's like, yeah, I want you. And she's kind of taken aback, but she's also like obviously kind of flattered. And she's like, okay, what do you have? What is this? And he's like, oh, well, I brought you flowers.
Yes.
Literally a dozen sacks of flour.
Yes.
Like with different colored tape on it to denote that it's different kinds of flour. Like he got her a variety pack of flour.
That was clearly homemade.
That was clearly homemade because she's a baker. So he bought her flowers. Like, the pun itself is adorable. The fact that he put so much thought into it is phenomenal.
So
like,
cute.
that is such an outstanding gesture of affection that is totally benign and could be refused with absolute impunity, but could be accepted with the utmost adoration. Like, phenomenal gesture.
Yeah, she makes the comment, you're like, you carried that all the way from, from your place or whatever, and he's like, yep. It's like, well, you want to carry it a little bit more?
Brown chicken, brown cow.
Yeah. So they walk back to her place.
She makes him dinner.
Yeah, it's cute.
She makes him sex.
Yeah.
Yep.
He plays his guitar and she swoons and then sucks on his face a little bit.
With her mouthpiece.
Yep.
Yep.
And then they wake up.
That's the one on her head.
Yes.
The mouthpiece.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then they wake up and all of their clothes dissolved. It was crazy.
Yeah, I think they were made of sugar. I mean, she's a baker. So
That's true.
She probably made them sugar clothes.
Yeah,
And that's why
spun
they
sugar.
dissolved. Yeah.
Something like astronaut food or something
Yeah.
like that. I don't know how it works.
It's like
but,
cotton candy. You get them wet and just...
Yeah, I wouldn't know.
There's a number of things in my life that, you get them wet and just...
Yep. I relate.
More than a few.
I
I would also
relate.
like to rewind the tape just a little bit and say Unmarked Brown Sax also feels like a band.
Yeah,
it is a band name.
Is that what it is?
I also picked up on that. That series of words that just jumped off the page.
Unmarked Brown Sax. Okay, should it be Unmarked Brown Sax with an X and they play the saxophone? Ooh. Or should it be Unmarked Brown Sax and it's like...
You never know what you're going to get.
Ooh.
See, I like the saxophone, but that's because I think the saxophone is the sexiest instrument.
It's definitely the sexiest.
Yeah.
It was in the Lost Boys. Remember that greased up guy in purple pants?
I do.
Remember that fella? Conventionally not the most attractive guy, but he sure knew how to play the saxophone.
Yes, he did. Oh.
It's true.
You're swooning. That guy is a little beefy for my taste. He's
It's all about the saxophone.
Well, it's the same thing, really.
Yep.
Okay,
You got a thing for Bill Clinton? He plays the saxophone.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, you did. You rascal. Okay, so they make us a whoopee.
They do what, Mark?
They make us a whoopee.
They make us a whoopee.
Make us a puppy.
They engage in Congress. Sexual.
The horizontal tango.
Yeah.
The beast with two backs.
Which is what that would sound like. But I don't know that for sure. Okay.
Is that when Mark, is that the sound you make when you touch cloacas?
Yes! I was going to say that.
Woof. Okay. Sorry, guys. We got distracted by the whoopee.
And the cloacas.
Well, you never know what you're going to get in that brown sack. Surprise!
Mama said life was like an unmarked brown sack. You never know what you're going to get.
Surprise. That's an orifice right there. It's just deep.
Surprise, motherfucker. Supplies, motherfucker.
Some fries, motherfucker.
Surprise, motherfucker. Oh, that's good. That's good. I'm going to use that at work. Surprise, motherfucker. Okay. This is way off topic.
So what happens after they knock the proverbial boots?
Yep.
I'm seeing the cogs turning. I'm curious if he's gonna come up with anything.
Okay, so he runs back to Hoffman and shares a little bit about his adventure.
Yeah, he basically tells Dustin Hoffman, "Hey, she loves me. I think I'm in a comedy." And Hoffman says, "Well, that's great, and it makes the work I just did like
Completely useless.
Useless. Just
invalidated my whole list." And he's like, "You had a list?"
And yeah, he basically came up with a list of authors that he thought, which again, this is like the brilliance of going to a literary expert. It's like, these are all of the living authors that meet the criteria that you're describing. It was like 6 names.
7.
7 names. Well, we're rounding up to the nearest 7.
Yep.
Or down.
Or down.
Either way.
And while they're discussing this list, Dustin Hoffman has a television on in his office, which seems a little strange for a literary expert, but we'll let it slide.
It's on the bookshelf.
This time.
It's on the bookshelf. So
It's literally in the bookshelf.
In the bookshelf. That is a good point.
I feel like if you're gonna have a TV in your office, it's got to be surrounded by books, and then it has to be showcasing some prolific author, which it was.
Book TV,
Yes.
right?
And it was displaying a recorded interview from 10 years ago.
Yeah. So it tracks.
Yeah, it does. You're right. You make a compelling argument. But Will Ferrell notices that the voice in the television is the same voice that he's hearing in his head. The exact same voice.
Dun dun
as in Saturday
dun!
Night. To which Dustin Hoffman replies, "Well, that's not good." And he says, "Why?" And he goes,
She kills people.
"She kills people."
All of them.
Yeah, she is like a notoriously talented author who has one major through line, and that is that all of her characters end up in a pine box.
Yep. Or worse.
Oak.
It is more expensive.
Yes.
Cherry.
Cherry's not altogether that expensive. It is a natural hardwood.
Plus, if you cremated the person in the cherry casket, you could smoke a rack of ribs above it.
It would smell very interesting.
Yeah. You don't crack that cherry. He's got to find her.
Yeah. So he goes back to his office and tracks her down, finds out where she works, finds out who her publisher is, goes to her publisher's office and makes himself sound like an absolute crackpot by saying to the, security person, the desk attendant, "Hey, I need to find her." "Okay, how do you know her?" "Well, I'm her brother." "You're her brother?" "Yeah, I'm her brother-in-law." "So she has a sister?" "Well, no. I'm married to her brother." "Yeah, you need to leave."
Not in this state, in the one over.
Yeah. And he goes, goes, "All right, here's why I really need to find her. Here's the truth, okay? I'm one of her characters, and she's going to kill me, so I really need to talk to her, and it's super urgent."
Oh, well, in that case, there's the front door.
Yeah. So
I thought it was fairly convincing, to be honest.
So she kicks his ass to the curb, and he runs back to his office and pores over paperwork and finds out they audited her like 10 years ago, and on the audit is her contact information and her office and, where she is and everything. So he makes it his mission to call her. Runs to his desk, pulls up his phone, the phones are down. Asks a coworker for a cell phone, there's no signal. So he runs to a payphone, and there is, how did she put it, a nearsighted octogenarian trying to reach his daughter in Denver no matter how many quarters it took. And that's
Funny.
such a beautiful line.
Yep.
Something that only an author could deliver.
And is literally the guy looks exactly how you would expect
100%.
that person to look.
It was
He was
five
the old man from Up.
5
Yes,
foot nothing,
exactly.
cross-eyed and talking very loudly.
Yep.
Are you talking about me again?
Yes.
More 3 eyes, less than 4.
Yeah, I got some. I got some eyes.
So then,
Got some in a drawer.
so then she mentions that he remembers that there's a bank of phones in the subway tunnel. So he runs to the subway tunnel, picks up the phone, calls her, and she kind of freaks the fuck out because this is the first time that she's ever actually realized that her characters are real people.
Yeah, the phone rings as she is typing. The phone rings.
Yeah, so it
And then it doesn't ring. And then it rings again when she types, "The phone rings again, period." And on the third one, she runs and gets it. And he's like, "Hey, so, I'm the main character in your book. I need to speak to you."
Yeah.
And she drops the phone and has like this moment of very clear and present panic.
Yeah, what I really appreciated about this moment is this is the beginning of an unexpected arc in the narrative. Up to this point, we were just kind of talking about Will Ferrell's character, and, that was it was all well contained. And while the author existed, she didn't have her own arc. But this is where her arc starts, and you start, contemplating, oh shit, all of my books are written about death, basically. I've killed everyone that I've written a book about, and it just like dawns on her that she's like a murderer.
She's
like
killed 8 people.
It's really interesting how like this arc kind of like tees up the climax, but it was unexpected.
And unfortunately, it just so happened that like the issue that she was dealing with, that Queen Latifah was there to help her with, was how to kill Harold Crick. And she figured out how to kill him very poetically, slightly ironically, a bit tragically, like earlier in the day before Harold calls. So she was basically operating on like this like elated notion of like, I'm going to land this plane of a novel that I've been writing for 10 years, and then suddenly discovers that the main character is a real person.
Yep.
And her writing his death could very well lead to his death. And so he asks her not to, understandably.
Yeah.
She gives him a copy of the manuscript to date, plus she has not typed out the death scene, but she has notes on
drafted it up,
basically how it would go. Like this, she's got the skeleton of it, but it becomes clear at that point that like until she puts the words on the page with a typewriter, it doesn't happen. It's not legit. It doesn't occur to him. So he gives it to Dustin Hoffman because he can't read it, and then he goes and meets Dustin Hoffman, and Dustin Hoffman basically says, "I'm sorry, you have to die."
Yep.
It is like an absolutely astounding work of literature.
This is amazing.
A masterpiece. Like, it is her swan song. It is her piece de résistance. Like,
he's not even like trying. Like, he's like, look, you need to die for this to come into the world.
Yep.
Yeah, but he doesn't say that. He doesn't say like you would need to die in order to. He's not giving him a choice. He's like, you have to die because this needs to be written.
Yes. I'm sorry. I feel bad, but
Yeah, right. But it's a small price to pay for a really good book.
Yep.
yes. So I mean, at this point,
Will Ferrell decides to return the manuscript,
Yeah.
and then basically gets up the courage on the way to return it to read it himself on the bus. And he himself becomes convinced that
It needs to happen.
yeah, and they do an amazing job at sort of like, at this point, you don't know what she has chosen as his death. Like, the characters know, but it's being sort of withheld, I guess, for suspense. It's a very kind of neat thing where all the characters in the story that you're watching know and understand what's going to happen, and you have no idea.
Yeah.
They do a really good job of obscuring it, too. Like, again, this is my first time through it, and I'm, like, wondering if, well, he dies at the end. Does that mean that he lives a full life, with his love, and then he dies? Like, there's, like, they don't give you any clues as to kind of how it plays out, only that this is a work of art, and he accepts it, too. So, like, you're talking about how it was withheld, and I felt like they just did a really good job of that. And all the characters that are sort of reacting to this information that we don't know as the viewer have such a profound, like, reaction to it that, like, it could be anything.
Yeah. So he returns the manuscript, says, "Go ahead and kill me." She types. He has one more very sort of like romantic and playful night with Maggie Gyllenhaal. And then he gets up the next day. It's his day to return to work. He goes to return to work. And basically what ends up happening is, because of an error with the watch, again, the whole watch thing, right? The seemingly innocuous act was the watch shutting down. And it shut down earlier in the film. He restarted it, asked somebody for the time. The person gave him the wrong time. So he was 3 minutes late for the bus. What ended up happening was the bus was coming. A kid rode out into the street on a bike and, like, fell over. He jumped out into the street and threw the kid back and then got hit by the bus fucking hard.
Yeah.
And you as the viewer are going to, you assume he's dead. I mean, like, he got fucking clocked.
Well, the whole thing is that he has to die.
Right.
Like, we've been leading up to this since the first 15 minutes of the movie. We know he's going to die. That's how the story ends. He's agreed to die. Like, he volunteered to die.
Yeah.
And I had this really, really, what I thought was poignant moment in my head while I was watching this, and I was like, ooh, I gotta save this. By him giving the manuscript back to Kay, our author, and giving permission to her to write his death, he was effectively committing suicide.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with that.
And I sat there and I thought, holy shit, this guy was giving over control of his life, knowing how it would end, knowing everything about every gory detail about how he's going to die, and then faces it like looking down the barrel of a gun.
Mm-hmm.
And
full acceptance.
Yep, full acceptance.
But it's also beautiful. Like, it's macabre. but it's also kind of like beautiful how he sort of like resigned himself to it. Like he is looking at the perspective of the narrator on his life, and he's decided that this is like fitting. And it doesn't like come across as like he's given up or he's doing it out of depression. Like he just like accepts that this would be
the best course of action.
Yeah.
It's a little, I mean, it's more like a ritualistic suicide, right? It's like seppuku.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, I'm doing this for the greater good.
Yep.
Kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it doesn't linger long enough for like the viewer to get like uncomfortable. Like it's definitely presented, because I think you're right. I think that is kind of him accepting his death, and it's like it is kind of like akin to suicide, but like it isn't portrayed that way. It's portrayed as like he's taking the high ground, sort of, that like he's assessed his life, and I don't know, like it's weird to describe like how it made me feel like viewing it the first time through.
The other thing that's kind of interesting is like he doesn't give any exposition about his like inner thoughts or workings. Like you as the viewer can only speculate why he came to that conclusion.
Yeah.
Right? Just because the death is poetic doesn't mean he wants to die. Like, this guy's got other motivations why he thinks that this is the correct course of action.
He just found love for the second time in his adult life, because earlier in the movie they explained that he was engaged to an actuary.
And there's an interesting connection that I just made. There was an interaction between Emma Thompson's character and Queen Latifah's character where they're talking about jumping off of a building.
Yes.
And Emma Thompson says to Queen Latifah, you know, we've all thought about jumping off a building.
Yeah,
before.
what do you think about jumping off a building?
You know,
and she says,
I haven't. I don't. And like there's this like interesting exchange where like Emma Thompson's character is just like saying, well, everybody thinks about killing themselves. Like this is no big deal. And like Latifah's like reaction to it is very like, no, that's you. And it's interesting how that kind of like fits within the context of Ferrell's later acceptance of his own demise, and if you view that through the lens of suicidal ideation, I don't know.
yeah. And the part that stuck out for me is he knows how he's going to die. He knows when he's going to die. He knows what is going to happen. And yet he chooses to get up and brush his teeth, brush each tooth 72 times, 38 times this way, 38 times that way, puts on his tie in a single Windsor just like he does every morning,
Straightens it.
grabs an apple on the way out like he does every morning, counts his steps on the way to the bus station like he does every morning, and he does every single action with the clear and present knowledge that this is the last time he will do any of those things.
Yeah.
Like, if you knew you were going to die tomorrow, would you still get dressed for work? Would you still go about your day the same way that you always have?
Yeah.
No. But because that's how it was written, he's got to follow the script.
He's got to follow the rules.
And he is a man of many rules.
Interesting. It's very interesting.
So you as the viewer are pretty sure this guy is cooked.
Yep.
But he ends up waking up in the hospital.
Yeah.
To a very droll and sort of
very disrespectful doctor.
Not the doctor's bedside manner left something to be desired.
What are you talking about? I thought it was great.
Mark thought it was great, which is that is not the endorsement you want. And yeah, basically the nuts and bolts of the end are, you know, Maggie Gyllenhaal comes and is with him and, you know, consoles him and yada yada, and their love story clearly continues. Emma Thompson goes to see Dustin Hoffman's character, gives him the finished book with the new twist ending. And actually, I think this scene actually might precede him waking up in the hospital. But Emma Thompson gives Dustin Hoffman the book with the new twist ending. And he basically says, like, it's okay.
It's fine.
It's not one of the most important pieces of English literature in the last 10 years, which is kind of implied like the other version would have been.
Yeah.
But he's like, you know, basically like, it's okay. And her response is basically like, I'm all right with okay.
Yep.
Because it means I didn't kill somebody, and it means I'm not just so tragically focused on death constantly. Like I don't think that needs to define me.
And she recontextualizes kind of his story, that her characters, they don't see it coming. But in this case, you know, he did see it coming and he chose to proceed forward. And that just like fundamentally changes what she wanted to communicate with the end of it. So like she justifies it and she like accepts it, and it's good.
Yeah, and like you said, it's kind of in response to what he says, was like basically like, he says the beginning of the novel doesn't make sense anymore because it's about a guy who doesn't know he's going to die and then dies. You know, she's like, I'll rewrite it. But basically, like, the difference is like, this guy knew he was going to die and marched on anyway. He's a hero.
Yeah.
And, I think also there was some ambiguity even among the characters of like, if I didn't write this, would that kid still have died?
Right.
Would that kid have died whether or not I put pen to paper? That was something that just kind of popped into my head this time watching it. But
if she didn't place Harold Crick in that position, would that kid that he saved get hit by the bus?
Right. And then I would say roll credits.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yep, she feeds him, Anna Pascal feeds Harold Crick some Bavarian sugar cookies on the hospital bed, and they're snuggling while he's recovering, and then roll credits.
Yep.
I get the sense that Maggie Gyllenhaal is a pretty good cuddler.
I would imagine so.
I would pretty fierce cuddler.
Yeah.
Like an aggressive cuddler or like a passive cuddler?
Fierce in that, like
drape your body over the other person kind of way.
Yeah. Which is great.
Which is what happened.
Like not just the like, I'm gonna lean on you and like grab your hand and like maybe do a couple of gossamer pets on the back of your hand, right?
That's not enough.
No. She's like, drape my legs over you while you rub my thighs and like.
Yep.
And she does that in multiple scenes. Like that's just that's just
how she operates.
I wonder. This is totally aside, but I wonder if that's how Maggie Gyllenhaal cuddles, and so that's how she played the scene.
That's what I'm saying.
If that's what she envisioned her character doing.
I personally would imagine that is how Maggie Gyllenhaal would have done it.
She seems like a good cuddler.
You could ask.
I love Will Ferrell. He's among my favorite actors.
He seems like an awkward cuddler.
I don't think Will Ferrell's a good cuddler.
No.
I don't think I would want to cuddle him.
Nope.
I mean,
I would rub his hair though.
I'd comb his stash. You know, if it's like an Anchorman-esque stash.
Yeah.
Okay,
I would cuddle with Maggie Gyllenhaal.
I would cuddle the shit out of Maggie Gyllenhaal.
Yep.
I mean, I'd get permission first, but
Yeah, I wouldn't do it.
Well, obviously.
Yeah. We got consent forms.
I live by vampire rules, okay?
Now-
There has to be a clear and present invitation.
You gotta invite me in.
now the seatbelts come out. Okay? All right. So, what are some things that we liked about this movie? I love the soundtrack.
Yeah!
I really enjoy the band Spoon, and I was kind of weird. Like I've never seen a band.
I also
so-
enjoy the activity spoon.
I believe it was
Yes.
Fork,
Oh,
which is an activity I enjoy even more.
Yeah.
what's a fork? What's a fork? Yes, what's a fork? Okay, but yeah, I love the soundtrack. It was poppy, it was catchy, it was really good. I don't think there was anything in this movie that I didn't like. I don't know. Like I really enjoyed the narration. I really enjoyed the illustration that we had in the beginning. It was very unique. It was quirky. The only thing that I can think of that this sort of reminds me to is that this is really out of left field, but that Nightmare on Elm Street movie. Oh God, what is the name of that one?
Dream Warriors.
Yeah,
Dream Warriors.
where there's like a narrator that's like, or not a narrator, but there's an author that's like writing a script for something that's happening.
In a Nightmare on Elm Street movie?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Is that? Maybe it is Dream Warriors. I don't know. That had Lawrence Fishburne in it.
Or is that like New Nightmare?
I bet you Lawrence Fishburne's a good cuddler.
I would imagine. Yeah.
I bet you that dude knows how to cuddle.
He probably has a very warm body.
Yeah.
Which I, as a very skinny person with like 0.3% body fat, very much appreciate.
Wes Craven's New Nightmare.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've never seen that. I've seen pretty much all of the other Nightmare on Elm Street movies.
Only seen one.
That is the most important one to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mean one as in
The first one. Yeah.
Johnny Depp is in that movie.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
he
he
gets
pops,
yeah,
doesn't
he gets swallowed by a bed, and then the bed vomits blood on the ceiling.
Yes.
More blood than he had.
Probably. I mean, they never claimed it was all his blood.
I would say
He could have gone into
exponentially.
the sort of the blood vat that is in the realm beneath the bed, and then the blood vat vomited the blood.
But yeah, people are always surprised because I love horror movies that I've only ever seen the first Nightmare on Elm Street, but it hasn't come up.
Right, but there's many different like subgenres of horror movie. So like I don't really enjoy them all that much. Like I'm fine with them, but like when I think horror movies, I don't think like the Nightmare on Elm Streets or the classic slashers.
No.
So that made that anyway.
I have like a stupid amount of bullet points for this movie. I think I've written more for this movie than basically anything else.
You were pretty active.
I got fucking carpal tunnel writing on this movie. Okay, so first of all, this is like one of the most meta movies I can think of. The only other one that sort of kind of gets into it, I think maybe a little bit more, is like The Never-Ending Story.
I've never seen it.
Okay, but like the
Whoa!
it's really good.
I've never seen it.
So the premise of the Neverending Story is like this kid is reading a book called The Neverending Story, and the idea is like the world in the Neverending Story is called Fantasia. It's disappearing basically because people aren't reading anymore and people aren't imagining anymore, and so the lack of imagination is like killing this world and leaving nothing behind. But at the end, they teach the kid who's reading the book how to imagine so these things sort of propagate and the world gets rebuilt. But then they're very meta about it, and they're like, just as he, meaning the kid who was reading the book, is sharing in your adventures, this is a character talking to another character in the book, there are people who are sharing in his adventure. Like, so calling out the audience, watching Bastian read the book, and, you know, watching the
is that the one where the horse dies in the swamp?
Oh, God, Artax sinking into the swamps of sadness.
You have to change. You have to see
It's the most crushing scene.
This is... It's no Princess Bride.
Right.
But, like, it's on the same fucking show.
But the funny thing is, having never seen the movie, what just happened right now, where I was like, hey, isn't that the one where the horse dies? I love saying that to people, just to see the reaction of trauma on their face.
Awful.
I don't really care about horses. Clearly you do.
How dare you? How dare you, sir?
That's fine.
But no, I've done it so many times. I'm like, wait, isn't that the one where the horse dies? And everybody in the room is just like,
Artax!
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a very meta movie. This, I think, is right on par with it in that, like, I hate the term. I know we talked about this ad nauseum before, but like I hate the term meta, but it is a great term for this type of movie where like it is a character who becomes aware of another character who's narrating their life, and this idea of like sort of connection through media of some kind, through time and space. It's a very, very it's wild. It's a very cool movie. Okay, so I wrote this down, and I feel like this is one that we might eddy on for a while. Maybe we won't. I don't know, but this just popped into my head while we were watching it this time. I had never like sort of come to this conclusion before, but it's a comedy about a tragedy.
Yeah.
Which is kind of interesting in that, like, that's a very, like, key part of this movie, right? Is, like, determining whether or not you're in a comedy or a tragedy. This movie ultimately was a comedy.
About a tragedy.
About a tragedy, which is, like, the perfect fodder for a dramedy.
Yeah.
Like, you want to build a dramedy? You build a dramedy that is quite literally about somebody who finds themselves inside a work of literature that is a tragedy, but make the movie really funny. And so, like, the outside, the shell is comedy. The inside is tragedy.
Yeah.
It's really fucking clever in that way, right? It's like this Russian nesting doll of literary themes.
Matryoshka doll.
Yeah. Okay, so we didn't eddy on that quite as long as I'm happy that you guys felt the same, but I thought the color schemes in this movie were brilliant. Both in like that was awesome kind of sense, but also like very striking. There were a lot of very stark contrasts throughout this movie. A lot of like white and black, a lot of bright colors and dark colors married together, which sort of like from a color palette standpoint reiterates this yin and yang of comedy tragedy, you know, the boring rule follower and the liberal free spirit.
Yeah.
This whole movie is sort of an exercise in dichotomies.
I wanted to talk about that too, because like Harold's apartment is sparse. There is no more furniture than there needs to be. There is no source of comfort other than the ones that he derives. Like, there's one blanket on his sofa, and there's a basic sheet and comforter set on his bed.
Oh, and
there's a lamp on his nightstand and nothing else.
I love that, like, the lamp on his next to his bed only illuminates his side of the bed.
Yeah.
So it's almost like he has like half of a bed.
Yeah.
Because that's all he needs, that's all he wants.
And then, like, everything in his apartment is sharp corners, and everything is neat and organized.
It's perfect.
His cubicle, obviously, is a standard cubicle in a gray office with gray walls, surrounded by gray people in gray suits. Like, and I don't know if you guys noticed this at all, but his suit that he wears to the office is gray.
I mean, I didn't see it, and that's probably why.
I did notice that because it stands in contrast to the
blue suit that he wears. The day that he's supposed to die, he wears a midnight blue suit.
It's a good-looking suit.
It's a very good-looking suit.
Not totally unlike the suit that Paul Rudd wears in I Love You, Man.
Yeah.
Perhaps slightly lighter in color.
But again, in stark contrast to Anna Pascal, whose bakery is wild and unpredictable,
Right.
messy, chaotic. Her paperwork is a disaster. Her apartment...
Oh, that chandelier in her apartment?
The chandelier in her apartment was like this rainbow mosaic of...
Cut glass.
Just cut glass in random shapes that were formulated into this fluid assortment. Every piece of furniture in her house is a different color and a different pattern. Everything about her just screams chaos.
Right.
He even asks her, "Are you a member of an anarchist group?"
Right.
And she goes, "Anarchists have groups?"
So they
Yeah, I think
like
that-
meet and assemble.
It's like, yes.
This movie is perfectly charming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In a word, I'll check that off my list. Perfectly charming. The dialogue in this movie is outstanding.
It's very witty.
This
Very.
movie, I would give it a 9 out of 10 on dialogue.
Yeah.
Very few movies, in my opinion, have dialogue that is simultaneously so relevant, right? There's no editing just for effect. It's everything fucking means something, advances the plot, does something.
There are
But-
no unimportant lines.
Exactly. But at the same time, sometimes when you try to do that, it can be boring.
Yeah.
And it's not. They're funny and they're witty and they're helpful and they're insightful. And it's like, what an amazing sort of eclectic mix of lines while simultaneously wasting no space. Which again, I think speaks to the whole, like we talked about, like an hour and 58. Like, fuck that. Like, this movie felt so tight because there was no fat. No
No.
fat to be trimmed.
And there was a lot of like British influence in the comedy bits where like there are quick one-liners that like, I don't know, we talked about it a little bit, when we were talking about yesterday, but that joke that's sort of just like sitting in the corner, there's a lot of that. If you're not paying attention, you're going to catch this joke and they don't really care. And they're going to move on. It's super witty. Yeah.
So a couple things that we've already sort of touched on, so I'll go through them really quick, but the digital accompaniments, especially in the beginning of the movie, and then sort of fading throughout, brilliant. This was an amazing departure from Will Ferrell's sort of standard fare. It's such a creative concept. I've never seen anything like this movie. It is such an amazingly creative idea. I love the fact that they don't explain how or why this works.
Yeah, right.
There's no attempt at saying like, oh, it worked because of some magical thing that connected her words.
She's got a magic typewriter.
Yeah,
No,
right. It's not magic
fucking-
typewriter. It's just like, we don't know why this happened, and we're not going to explain it because we don't fucking understand it.
And that's why-
Just accept it.
And that's why it's stranger than fiction.
Right. Truth is stranger than fiction, right?
Yep. I love that. I
Oh,
hate
it's
it
beautiful.
because it's a fucking movie,
Yes.
Like we're here to turn our brain off or we're here to just have a good
Escape
time.
reality.
Yeah. And there's no
And like,
apology.
they don't know.
No.
Like, everything that we know is a result of what the characters know, and they have no fucking idea why this happened.
Like when
so there's no explanation
when it
for it
gets
for the
revealed
audience.
that Harold is a real person and she freaks the fuck out. She's like, "Oh my god, this is terrifying." She doesn't go on this soul-searching quest to find out why she's killing these people. She just decides to stop.
Yeah.
So, my last bits. So in addition to the creative fucking like infographics and shit that pop up, we need to talk about how absolutely mind-bogglingly spectacular the cinematography was in the movie. Specifically, the two I've got, and this is by no means do not limit this movie to these two things, but the zoom in at the beginning, holy fucking shit!
Like in the mouth, like that mouth scene.
Oh,
All the way
the
through
mouth, the
the
mouth
world.
scene. Yeah, the mouth scene was right after that, which is awesome. But no, this was like the planet, and then zooming in all the fucking way to like his watch.
Through the
Yeah.
windows of the adjacent apartment buildings, through a water glass, and into his watch, and then eventually into the inside of his mouth as he's looking at the mirror.
Yeah, there's so many of them.
Fucking beautiful.
And then the second one I have was at one point, shortly after he has that interaction with his friend that sort of freaks his friend out, he ends up in the HR office, and behind him there is this wall that's painted like clouds, and Harold's mind starts to drift because he's hearing the voice again, sort of like talking about
the clouds start to move.
Yeah, the situation he's in,
Yeah.
and the clouds start to like drift ever so slightly, and it's a great signpost for like where Harold's mind is.
Yes.
It's beautiful.
Oh,
It's in the clouds.
I'm gonna gush on the cinematography here for a second.
Don't get anything on my table.
Too late.
Damn it.
So, gushing about the cinematography, I just, like what Mark mentioned with the infographics and what Colin mentioned with the zoom, I loved how creative the cinematography was because it was intentionally unremarkable when it needed to be, and it was intentionally unique when it needed to be. So the shots of Harold in his office and going about his daily life were perfectly mundane in the sense that there was nothing creative or remarkable about the cinematography other than the infographics that were overlaid. But when Harold was interacting with Anna Pascal, it was shot from very unorthodox angles, from the other room, from the side of his head, from just different perspectives, and it just really did a great job of showcasing how unpredictable and chaotic her patterns are compared to his.
Yeah, there was an interesting shot where, like, he picks up the guitar and she's in the bathroom at the mirror, and, you know, like, the wall is kind of, like, dividing the shot in two. You've got both of them in there at the same time, and I don't know. It was really thoughtful.
I feel like the movie did a great job at incorporating really creative and unique camera angles and shots without making it seem forced or like that's what they were trying to do. They made it seem very organic and sort of a natural part of this narrative.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, it was amazing. This movie came out in 2006.
It was a good year for me.
Yeah.
That's when I started working at a movie theater.
Fuck. Actually, was that when I started working in a movie theater?
I don't know.
No, 2005. I started working in 2005.
I was working in a deli.
September 2005. I was in...
Yeah, I worked at a deli.
A delicatessen.
Yeah. Yeah, 901 pasta, good memories. But yeah, no, the cinematography was clever, it was creative, it was unique.
So in other words, it was mucho good.
Yes.
Yeah, I think the mundane scenes just helped to, like, amplify the unique ones. And like you said, you know, I felt like it impacted your feelings and less of your thoughts, you know? Like you said, it was subtle in how they did it. Which is perfect because it manipulates your feelings and how you interpret it.
Yeah.
And it's not like, wow, that's fascinating. I mean, it was fascinating, but, like, we watch movies and we talk about them. So, like, that's how we're going to look at them.
Like the hallway with the filing cabinets and the boxes, they could have shot that from any angle, but they shot it down the center to show and bring attention to the symmetry and the careful, meticulous thought that went into organizing all of this.
Yeah.
And then in her bakery, there was not a single camera shot that was used twice.
Single-use camera shot. Use it. Get it out of here.
Yeah.
Get it out of here.
All right, so was there anything else that you liked? I mean, I think that the next section is going to be pretty brief.
Yeah. I mean, you talked about the music. We talked about the dialogue, the cinematography. The long and short of it, I really just like this movie on the whole.
Mm-hmm.
Like Preparation H.
Yeah.
It feels good on the whole.
Yeah.
Right on the hole. You know, rim of the hole.
Not in it. Don't go too deep.
Are you not supposed to?
I mean,
I may have been using this wrong.
You do that deep cream.
Yeah.
You know?
Talk to Bartholomew
If
about
I can't taste it.
Then you're still safe.
when your burps taste like Preparation H.
You got it deep enough.
Yeah.
You back off a little bit.
Yeah.
That's like, it's like the little line on the, the dipstick of your oil gauge.
Yeah.
You know, it's a guide,
Yep.
you know? Okay.
2 knuckles, not 3.
It's just like a dipstick in a car with the oil, right? It's like when the brown starts. That's when you should probably stop.
Yeah. But you can keep going.
Yeah, you keep going. It might not have much effect.
It's just not good for you.
It's
Stop at the second knuckle.
stop.
Stop
When you hear
or a yeah. Is there anything that we didn't like? I'm going to offer that to the table, but let me answer real quick. Not really.
Nope.
Right?
No, I can't think of much. Really, it's a really, really good movie.
Yeah.
In the sense that, like, I think last week with Ned Devine, it was like there wasn't anything I had to complain about, but it was like all sort of like above 5, but some of it maybe wasn't like massively above 5. I would say this was like medium plus above the threshold of liking it or not, if that makes sense, right? Like, it was strong pretty much all around. Are we ready to move on to quotes?
Yes!
I've dropped both of mine already.
This movie's so fucking quotable.
Yeah,
so quotable.
I'll just say him again real quick, but I've already mentioned him. I had the bit where he's talking to Dustin Hoffman's character, and Dustin says to him, "She couldn't possibly be a narrator. There isn't much to narrate." I love that little bit. My other one, again, I've already mentioned it, but again, it's also Hoffman, where he's trying to figure out what kind of story Will Ferrell's character is in, and he makes the comment, let's start at ridiculous and move our way backward. I find that to be just a great all-around quote that I could use in other applications. Anyway, what else you got?
I had written down 5 quotes. Like I said, this movie is ridiculously quotable. I had written down 5 quotes, which is to say I had 7. Because we're rounding up to the nearest 7. We don't normally do this, but I managed to burn through 4 out of these 5 in our description because they just are so...
they're topical.
Yes, exactly. There's, again, no dialogue is wasted, right?
No.
So, everything is important for the narrative, and if we're explaining it, you almost have to quote the movie. But there was one that I didn't put in, and that was when Queen Latifah and Emma Thompson first meet each other. Queen Latifah, like we said, is sort of an agent of the publishers, and she's kind of taking stock of Emma Thompson and her method and all that shit. And you get the sense is like she's kind of in charge. She's responsible for making sure shit gets done. So she's being a little critical, and she says to Emma Thompson, "And I suppose you smoked all these cigarettes?" And Emma Thompson whips around and goes, "Oh no, those came pre-smoked."
So
fucking brutal.
So witty.
Savage response.
So would you? I'm sorry, real quick though. Would you say that Queen Latifah's character is almost like a hitman?
Kind of.
She's sent to get a job done.
She is definitely like...
She's the Axeman.
There are people like that, right? Where it's just like this person gets shit done, and it may be wet work, right? Or it could be like, make sure an author finishes their book. Or it could be, any number of things. But like, I feel like in any field, there are those people where it's like, we need to call so-and-so because they're going to come in and they're going to fucking do it.
Yeah, what's that line in like Lilo and Stitch, I'm the one they call when things go wrong?
Yeah.
And
Cobra Bubbles
have definitely gone wrong. All right, sorry, Jason.
So I have 7 quotes, which is to say that I have 4. Mm-hmm. And my first one is after Harold starts hearing the voice, but before he seeks outside help. He's in that little corridor where they're talking about the cases and they're looking through the boxes. And he's talking to his colleague. And he says, "Dave, I'm being followed." And his colleague, Dave, says, "Harold, you're not moving. How are you being followed?"
So literal. But of course, I mean, if Will Ferrell's character in this movie is going to have a friend, it's going to be that guy.
Yeah. No, it's exactly what you would expect from an auditor from the IRS to say in response to that statement.
Yep. Yeah. So my second quote comes from his first meeting with Anna Pascal, and Emma Thompson is narrating his love and feelings.
Lust.
Yeah. His cathexis and liminence for Anna Pascal's character. And he kind of zones out while she's talking and ends up staring at her chest. And she goes, "Mr. Crick, you're staring at my tits." He goes, I was? No, I don't think I would do that. And even if I was, I assure you it was only as a representative of the United States government.
Yeah, so it's fine. It's fine.
Which somehow makes things worse.
So much worse.
I'm a doctor, okay?
So then my third quote. Yeah, so after that first meeting with Anna, he's riding the bus. And she gets on the same bus. And he's like, "Hey, Miss Pascal, hi." And she tries to avoid him. And then the bus takes a hard turn and she gets thrown into a seat adjacent to him. And he says something to the effect of, "Are you going to work?" And she goes, "No, it's my weekly evil conspiracy and needlepoint group. You want to come?" And he says, "Oh, sorry. I left my thimbles and socialist reading material at home."
So witty.
Yeah, it really kind of highlights his character as being, like, capable of witty banter.
Yeah.
It's just not his go-to.
Nope. Not his comfort zone. And my last one is after Dustin Hoffman tells him, he's like, you need to die because this is her masterpiece. I'm sorry, but this is just the sacrifice you have to make. Will Ferrell's character looks at him and he goes, I can't die right now. It's just really bad timing.
Yeah. Tell me about it. Yeah.
It feels like the thing that somebody would comically say to death.
Yeah.
It's like, no, this is a very inconvenient time.
Like,
please come back.
Can you come back later? Like, I'm kind of doing something.
I get it. You know, you got prepared. You got your robe on. You got
Yeah.
your sickle and all that fun stuff. And I know you came all the way over here, but, like, seriously, bad time. I got a casserole in the oven.
Yep.
I got a big report due at work tomorrow.
Just got a girlfriend. Like, I would like to enjoy that a little bit longer.
Let's do next week.
Yeah.
How's Tuesday?
We both got jobs here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're both busy, hardworking people.
Okay. Are we done with quotes?
I think so. We're ready to riggedy rate.
Oh.
Yeah, buddy.
Let's rate this bitch.
All right. I've been going first with most things in this particular episode, so I'm gonna do it again.
He usually does finish first.
Yeah, he does. It's
I love it. Most people are unimpressed.
put off by your awkward staring in the corner.
Oh no, I was gonna go with my quickness.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So you just kind of shuffle off to the corner and make yourself a sandwich.
Yeah, you finish up. So I'm gonna go with a.
We're talking about Settlers of Catan, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, I thought we were talking about Congress. Sexual.
There was a physical flourish.
There was
before
a
he
beautiful flourish.
Said
Like
sexual
that?
like that. I loved it. I don't know how well it's going to translate to
It
the
translates.
mic, but
Look.
They'll feel it.
yeah.
You felt it, didn't you?
There's an energy there, right?
You know, you felt that, right? I felt it. I'm going 7.6.
That's not the first time you've said that, right? You felt it, right? I felt it.
That's a penis joke.
I thought we were still talking about Catan.
7.6 spoons.
Ooh. Very nice.
I like it.
Okay, so I will give this movie an 8.1. Little did he knows.
Little did he knows.
Because that's a part of the body.
Yeah.
As well as a
sniffer.
word to describe
Yuff.
somebody's
Yuff.
awareness of a situation or thing.
Your sniffing arm.
Yeah.
You're sniffing arm. That is, first of all, that's a band.
Sniffing arm.
But that's also a very good term for a nose. Sniffing arm. Is that
Sniffing
one word?
arm. Yeah.
Should be.
Sniffing arm.
Hyphenated.
Sniffing arm. It feels a little like the fucking snarf from
Snarf.
Would you go SN or SCHN?
Oh, sniffing arm.
Sniffing arm.
The sniffing arm. Put the trigger in the brisket. Okay, well, this has evolved a little bit. Now I'm imagining, I don't even know what the device is, but like I'm imagining like an old sort of southern German fellow turning a crank on some very old, very wooden machine as it turns and makes the sound. Like it sounds like a mixture between like a mandolin and like an organ, and it doot 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 doot
Like
doot,
a
doot.
hurdy-gurdy.
This is a sniffing arm. I'm playing the sniffing arm. Hey, sniffing arm.
Oh,
So
beautiful.
What kind of rates would you give this, Monsieur Jackson?
I'm going to give this a 7.4.
Oh.
And I had two metrics. So I'm going to hit you with the one that I chose first, and then I'm going to hit you with my backup.
Back in.
So this is 7.4 pre-smoked cigarettes.
Ooh,
I
that's
thought
nice.
about that too. That's a good one. That's a
My,
good one.
my backup was going to be 7.4 Bavarian sugar cookies.
Ooh.
Also,
That's what you eat when you listen to the sniffing arm.
Yeah! And finishing your pre-smoked cigarettes.
And that's it, right? So that's we don't have any.
Yeah,
other
there's
ratings.
nothing else.
We don't. We can land this plane.
well, perhaps we do. In fact, let me check under here. Do we perhaps have a scene score?
Scene score. We do actually. Now that you mention it. Yeah. You found that under the paper. I found it.
I did.
Okay, so scene score. Let's see.
This is a real tight one.
Yeah, so we had 10 respondents to our movie familiarity survey. Next week, we're going to have more because all you motherfuckers on the newsletter, you're going to fill it out. You're going to tell us all about that new movie.
Yeah.
That's going to be a good movie.
And I the people that responded, I love you. You know?
They're good people.
Yeah.
They're like, let's just say,
Yeah.
They are the U.S. and U.K. They're the allied powers of the World War II that is the podcast.
Yeah. That was where I was going with it.
Let's just say everybody who didn't respond is obviously Hitler.
Yeah. Or at least a hemorrhoid-adjacent person.
They're Mussolini, at least.
Yeah.
Okay, meanwhile, having called some of our fan base Hitler,
They're aware of it.
average familiarity, 3.5.
Okay.
I guess that's still in the realm of what I expected, but this is a slightly higher profile movie, I think, in a general
I would have
audience.
expected a little bit more.
Just a little bit. Not, I don't know necessarily to 5, but like 4, 4.5, I think I was what I was expecting.
Yeah.
So I gave it an 8.1, Mark gave it a 7.6, and Jackson gave it a 7.4. Pretty tight grouping. That gives us a 7.7 average score for the three of us.
That's respectable.
And a slight punch-up, because we had a little bit of familiarity, but it still wasn't over the 50% mark. It gives us a scene score of 8.2.
Yeah, that feels good.
Yes.
It feels good.
I mean, I love it, because I gave this thing an 8.1 out of the gate. So, that's what's up. 8.2. I agree with that. I fucking love this movie.
It's such a good one. And like I said before, it's unoffensive. It's unobjectionable. Like, this is a safe movie.
But it was a nice surprise.
Yeah.
Which I think is what that captures, too. Is that, like, I've never seen it before.
Yeah.
This was delightful.
It was a very, very comfortable, wholesome movie that made you feel things and care.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Solid.
Don't you make me feel feelings.
I know.
Are we learning?
I think so.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that is all for the All Crep Review. Please don't miss our upcoming tour where you can see bands. I mean, some really wonderful bands.
Really good ones.
Bands as unique as Dirty Old Baxter.
I love Dirty Old Baxter.
Which is, Darius Rucker's new sort of side project that he's doing.
His third one, I think.
Yeah. Third one this month.
Yeah.
And they are opening for Unmarked Brown Sax.
Oh,
very
man.
provocative.
We're still not totally sure if they're going to be playing the saxophone, but if they are, let's just say sax out.
Yep.
Right? Everybody get your sax out.
Yep. Not all of it, just the sack.
No, don't. Come on. This is a public place. It's sax only.
You call it a satchel party. It's a party where it just sacks out.
Just sacks out. I'm not saying I want to create that party, but like
I would attend that party.
This feels like something that probably would have been invented in the 70s.
A satchel party?
Yeah, like I know
party.
like there were nude parties, there's topless parties, there's bottomless parties even that have been referenced in like popular
but
culture.
Just a satchel party?
But sax out?
Yeah.
Like a satchel party. Just I don't want to put this together, guys, but like somebody's gonna, and I feel like we should get the credit.
Yeah, It's like if I see your member, you're a pervert. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yuck.
We're just
100%.
talking sax here. Okay. Sacky Joe.
Yeah.
Sacky Joe.
Sacky Joe.
That's the guy who goes to the party all the time and no one talks to him because he sits over in the corner.
the one in the corner, yeah.
He's watching more than he's participating, and it makes people uncomfortable.
Yep.
Sax out, flax out.
Sacky Joe.
And then off on a very side stage, it's actually not even in the festival grounds, there will be a little old German man with his old Bavarian contraption known as the Schniffelarm.
Yeah, would you like to hear the Schniffelarm?
Listen to Schniffelarm!
I don't know if that's what it sounds like, but that's how I feel.
No, I believe that is that is his pet that dances around as the Schniffelarm plays. We don't know if it's a monkey, a rat, or some hybrid dog.
But it's all teeth.
It is a very ugly, very mangy-looking animal that only responds to his call.
And it's just wiry hairs everywhere and like Gary Busey eyebrows.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Google an eye, and it's basically that, but with Gary Busey's face.
Yep. And temperament.
So don't miss that. Don't miss all of that. Don't miss the sack party.
It would be heartbreaking if you missed the satchel party.
Thank you again for listening. If you have any ideas for movie reviews, you can email us at 3, that is the number 3, menandabasement@gmail.com. You can also fill out our movie suggestion form on our website, tmaab.podbean.com, TMAAB stands for 3 Men and a
Basement! Also, get yourself some goddamn merch.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got merch on our site now. So if you wanna support us, which is to say, give us money in exchange for goods that you can then wear out in the wilds, the public.
Yeah.
And people can be like, flex that on your shirt. You can be like, oh, it's fine.
It's
don't worry
only
about
the
it.
greatest podcast
It's like
ever.
the coolest. Don't worry about it.
Take it to your next sack party.
Yep.
Honestly, that's what we should
Be a
do,
good
right?
sack
We should have a
party.
merch sack party, kind
Ooh.
of combo.
Yeah.
Some little sacks.
I don't know how the wives are going to feel about this.
It's fine.
But it's promoting the podcast, right? It's this is our hobby, so like
Yeah.
we can't get in trouble for this.
Yep. Sign up in the cafeteria.
I move that we should create some sack satchels with the logo on them.
Oh yeah, okay.
What about like a fanny pack?
And then
for your
technically you're not nude,
Right.
right? Your sack is in another sack.
Yep.
That happens to be dangling outside of whatever sack contains your legs.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
It's a sack within a sack within a sack. It's very meta, Mark. We talked about this with the movie.
Inception.
Sack satchel.
Sackception. You can also find this podcast, the one you're listening to right now, on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you find your podcasts. And until then, I'm Colin McLeod,
Marco.
Action Jackson.
and we'll see you in cyberspace. Sniffing arm.